I mean, we know the one that has taken off, made the most headlines, were his comments about the quarterback, Mr. Quarterback. How'd you feel about that, man? In terms of him essentially saying that, he wants Mitch back, and not just for this season, but more so looking at him for the long term as well.
That was the part that shocked me. Everything about his messaging, along with what Rooney was saying a few weeks back, has been consistent. We want Mitch back.
Yeah.
Which, again, I'm completely fine with. I talked myself into it where,
right.
Hey, we're going to be spending money on a backup anyway, with how the numbers would be situated if we ended up cutting Mitch and signing another guy. We're paying like probably a $2 or $3 million excess and keeping him on the roster. But I think he's a higher end backup, if not, probably would be the best backup in the league.
Yeah.
I think he's worth $2 or $3 million to keep over someone like a Jacoby Brissett or like a Case Keenum or something like that. So I'm fine with it. And he even sold me even further, and I was happy this question was brought up. It wasn't even on my mind, but I think it was Brooke Pryor that asked it.
Shout out to Brooke.
She was like, what do you think the importance is of having a veteran presence in that QB room with a young quarterback like Pickett? And Con was basically saying, like, you can ask Kenny himself or you could ask any quarterback. They would say it's, like, invaluable. It's, like, it's very important for them. So to keep a guy like Mitch, who was already here for Kenny's rookie season, knows the guy, it seems like they have a good rapport, I think that means something. So that in and of itself is probably worth that extra $2 or $3 million. I'm fine with it. But then whenever he said long term, me personally, I don't care. I'm fine with that. Does Mitch want to be our next Charlie Batch? I'm all for it. I'd give it the thumbs up. I don't know if Mitch wants to be that, though. We just haven't heard from Mitch at all. I don't even know if he wants to be back this year.
Yeah.
So we'll see. The Steelers wanting Mitch back, 100% fine with it if that takes place for this year and if it happens beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, man, I was kind of with you. I was not surprised when he said he wanted him back because we've obviously broke that down and we agreed, it makes sense to bring him back. He's familiar. We already know the dynamic here. But when he said long term, I definitely was like, this is a little bit different for me, man, for a couple of reasons. Number one, man, we haven't heard from Mitch, so I am with you on that. We don't know where he's at. But number two, I started to think to myself, with you hearing Omar Khan saying that we would want him long term, they clearly see something that they like about him. They clearly see something that they trust in him and something that they feel confident if it ever happened where he had to go back out there, they would feel more than confident putting him out there. So then I started to think, I'm like, man, if you Mitch, do you take that approach and say, I play this long game and see, can Kenny actually do it for 17 weeks, stay healthy, and produce and make it look like I did last season while we know more film is going to be out there, teams are going to be more prepared this time around, and see how that goes for him? Or do you look at it and say, you know what, man, I just don't want to deal with the situation anymore and just leave? But I could honestly see it going the other way because for Mitch, I'm sure when he looks at Kenny based off of this season, there's still some parts of him that he feels like, man, I still feel like if we got another chance to really have all things equal, that I could beat him out. And if he truly feels that, for him to stay here, that would give him that intro, so to speak. You know what I mean? Because he's going to get a chance to compete with him every day in OTAs. He's going to get a chance to compete with him every day in minicamp. Maybe not in the full sense of equal reps, but in the full sense of we see when you throw the ball and you see when I throw the ball. We're going to see the plays you make. We're going to see the plays that I make, and so forth and so forth. So I wonder for him, does he consider that and say that that might be his best option versus having to go somewhere else, new situation, new offense, new
probably
quarterback, less money, and all those other dynamics, all those other variables. So it might not be that he doesn't want to be a starter if he stays here. He still could want to eye that, but just look at this situation as, man, I know what to do. I know how to be professional when I need to be professional, which most people who've played long enough, you get in a situation where you have to be professional with your competition, with the guy they drafted you to replace. But at the same time, you're going to have in the back of your mind, man, this dude ain't nicer than me. And you're going to be showing it every single time. And you never know. Injuries happen, and that can get you opportunities. When you get out there, well, hey, now you're in control. But I could definitely see him looking at it a little bit like that after I heard Omar Khan say I like him long term too. Because it's like, man, they really sound like they rock with you, Mitch. They really sound like they like something about you that hasn't been stated publicly. Because outside of the long term part, everything just made sense for it to be a 1-year thing and move on. But when you start saying long term, now it's like, man, well, what do you like? How do you truly see this thing going?
Well, we saw him down training with Pickett. He's showing that team guy attributes.
Yeah.
And Omar used the adjective. I think it was multiple times. Mitch has been awesome. Mitch has been he's been terrific. You know, we really like what Mitch brought to the table this year.
Man. He's a professional, true professional, man.
So combine that with how he looked in spell duty, Bucks game, Ravens game, 3 picks inexcusable, but everything else looked pretty good. Panthers game, like I would want him back too if I'm Omar Khan. Like I think he could be the perfect backup for us.
Yeah.
And long term, sure too. It just all depends on what Mitch is looking for. I'm hard pressed to believe though. You look through these teams, man. NFC South. With the Panthers, Falcons, Saints, Buccaneers, they're talking about going Kyle Trask. You mean to tell me like you couldn't sign Mitch or trade for Mitch and pay him like $5 million and have him compete for a starting job? We just witnessed Geno Smith resurrect his career.
That makes sense, but this was all prior to Omar saying, "Not only do we want him here, we want him here long term." That changed everything.
I'm just saying, if you're Mitch, though,
yeah.
I think. Now, I guess it depends on how other temes around the league
let me ask you a question then. You saw how Carolina played out between Baker Mayfield and between, oh my God, who's the cat they traded for from the Jets? Sam Darnold. All right, so we saw how those two dudes played out down there and ultimately that disastrous situation. If you're Mitch, is that more enticing than saying I'm going to stay here and wait to see what happens with
continuity
Kenny?
Here.
Absolutely. And Omar brought it up as well when they were asking, hey, man, are you concerned with Kenny's concussion history because he had 2 this past season? He was like, absolutely, with him having 2 in 1 season. Does Mitch look at that and say, this still seems like a better scenario than me going to a Tampa where we know cap-wise they are in hell? And who knows what that roster is going to look like by the time they're done and it's week 1? Do you really want to be in that situation? And now they're saying, hey, you're the starting quarterback, but what weapons are you throwing to? What's your offense look like? And that's only going to hurt your reputation or hurt your opportunity of being a starting quarterback more than it could help you. Whereas as long as he's sitting behind Kenny, he can't put out any bad tape. It's not going to be anything bad that happens. Think about everything that we've talked about, Mitch. We speak of positively -3 interceptions in that Ravens game because we haven't seen anything else. So he can still live off that, so to speak. He's going to be fine in the preseason. We've already seen that. Preseason for professionals, you should be able to do just what you need to do to get up out there. Couple series and I'm out. So for him, I think of that part, and that's why I'm kind of back and forth with the money that he already has here versus the opportunity to go and play somewhere else, but that situation could be really bad.
Right, because then the other teams you got to be thinking about, someone like the Cardinals, how long's Kyler Murray going to be out, but he's always going to have a presence there.
And do you fit the style of offense that they have designed for Kyler?
Texans, Colts, they're going to be looking for the rookie quarterback. You could compete with the rookie, but then you're almost putting yourself in the same situation that you were last year here in Pittsburgh.
As soon as something goes wrong, you're the scapegoat. Or when they feel like they're tired of waiting, they just going to put him in anyways.
Dolphins, I think he's better than Tua.
We got to see what they're going to do with the option, though, with Tua.
They're not gonna pick someone else over Tua. They're just not. I don't see it happening. But that's what I would do if I was the Dolphins. You know who the sneaky destination could be?
All right, let me hear it.
If Danny Dimes doesn't move off his $45 million.
Ooh.
That's what I would do.
But
I mean, that would make perfect sense.
Though. When did they just tag him?
Probably. I'd trade him, though. Tag him and trade him.
Fair.
That would make a ton of sense for Mitch because then you're going to stability, Giants, Dable from the Bills.
And you feel really good. Yeah.
You already have that connection there.
A lot of continuity. That actually does make sense. I would like that one.
That's like if the
really
Giants were savages.
Yeah.
The Giants got to be savages about that.
But would you move on from the guy that you drafted in the first round when he finally has his breakout season?
New regime.
He finally has his breakout season. He finally is hit.
I would if he's asking for $45 million.
The number, yes. The
Like,
number,
like,
is the killer part. But once again, this is what I have to ask you.
We search for
quarterbacks all the time. They finally feel like they have one based on this season, and now you move on. You essentially just wasted the past 5 years. You hit the reset button after you finally feel like you got your guy. He finally has developed. You finally got a coach that can work with him. You finally got some pieces around him, and it's like, now we're gonna move on. That's how I'm looking at Baltimore right now.
How much does Dable believe it's him, though?
to an extent, you always feel good about yourself, but at the same time, any coach that acts like you don't need talent, I think they're a fool because you need talent. You need talent and coaching.
I think Mitch is just as talented as Danny Dimes. Now, Danny Dimes had a better season than Mitch has probably had in his career. I know he made the pro. I don't know. That Chicago year is probably comparable to what Danny Dimes did last year.
Okay.
But no, I mean, right now, stock up on Danny Dimes versus Mitch, clearly. But I don't know how far off it is if Mitch got into the whole Dable system and everything. Who knows? But for $45 million on Danny Dimes versus Mitch Trubisky, maybe you get for $5 in there. Or if we just traded him, you're dealing with that $8 base salary. I would take Mitch.
Okay.
Because that's a lot.
It is. I just think of everything that goes with that move and what you're going to do if Mitch is just Mitch and not Mitch outplaying Danny Dimes that we just saw from a year ago. Now you saved all that money, but you got a big hole at the most important part of your roster, and you're not going to be able to compete without it.
Yeah, I want the Mitch that played the last 3 games versus those first 3 games this last season. That's the Mitch I want. I guess you don't know what you're getting.
So you willing to bet the 40 on it, essentially? That's what you have to ask yourself.
I would do 40, yeah.
You bet the 40?
If it was high 20s or like a 30 or something, you'd stick with Danny Dimes. But 45 is just absurd. It's out of hand.
Fair enough. So
Danny Dimes needs
so it's a 40. So it's a 45 bet then. $45 million bet essentially what the Giants will do if they decided not to do that, sign him and trade or tag him and trade him. They're betting that, hey, I can find a better solution for $45 million. Who knows? But this is what
the solution is: bring in a Mitch, and then you could use that money and allocate it elsewhere on your team. Get better receivers in the house, whatever.
Yeah.
That's an option.
Because the thing, too, I look at it as like this. It's not like they've had to pay Danny Dimes at all. So where has all this money that they've been allocating these past couple of years went anyways? We talk about this 45 as if this is about to be something different.
Darius Toney was a draft pick.
Right, but we talk about this 45 like this is something that's, new money. Where's this been at? Tell me where they've been spending this 45 at anyways.
Defense a little bit.
Was the defense the reason they went? They had the success they had this year?
They were just a good balanced team.
Yeah.
Offense was good, was efficient. Danny Dimes and Barkley. The receiver sucked.
Yeah. But Danny Dimes was a big part of it, though. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, he played good.
Yeah.
He played
45 is the number. That's the crazy part.
I don't think he played good enough to be getting paid franchise. I mean, he's on the cusp. Now he's getting in that weird category.
He is.
You pay him 45. He's Kirk Cousins range for me. It's like that's a terrible contract. That's a terrible quarterback to have on your team.
Yeah.
Right now, you're right. He's on the rookie deal, all that type of stuff. So it's not as bad. But man, once that number gets to that point, you're Tannehill,
this is
Kirk
what Washington
Cousins,
did. Think about Washington.
Damn.
Washington, when they had Kirk, they had to make a decision. They franchised him twice, and we see where they've been since then. You think of Minnesota, we could say overpaid for Kirk, which is fine. But they've at least been to the postseason, every year he's been up there?
No.
How many? They ain't missed it a lot.
2 from what I can recall.
2 a division. He's been up there for 4 or 5 now?
2, maybe 3 max. The one was the Saints win, and then he lost to the Niners in this last season. Those are the only ones I remember.
Okay.
Because the one that they went before, I think, was with Case Keenum.
Right. But was that his last year? Because he did the 2 tag years. I'm trying to see. How long has he been up there?
I don't know, 4 or 5 years. It's either he the one that I know it's 2 for sure. If he made a 30, he was one and done.
Because I think of they were
just like 800 or under
that they've had
500
in Minnesota with him versus like where Washington is right now, still searching for a quarterback. And that's kind of like the question that you ask yourself: do you pay or overpay in certain scenarios, and you feel good about the quarterback, but you know you're gonna have, like we're talking about Minnesota, it's like, man, you wouldn't want to pay him that, but we can't control that was the market at the time. Versus you don't pay that, but you're the Commanders. And you look at the Commanders, how do you ever, like, when we look at their team each and every season since Kirk has left, whether it was the one year, even when Wentz went there, it was like, cool, but you still don't feel it all the way. And that's one of the other alternatives where you save the money, but do you ever feel like you're legitimately going to have a chance to make some noise? Minnesota, they was dominant during the regular season, so at least you got that.
So it worked out for Seattle most recently. That type
of
gamble. Yeah, I just don't think Danny Dimes is a $45 million type of quarterback. That's my main thing. That's a lot of money.
Hey, man, y'all set the market. Quarterback, y'all love quarterbacks, man. Keep paying them.
That's a lot.
Hey.
That's what I'm saying. It's an option if the Giants are trying to play hardball. I don't know what the relationship's like with the organization and the coach and Danny Dimes, because we haven't heard anything in terms of little ripples and little back and forth like we have with the Ravens and Lamar.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming they're trying. You're right. They're probably just going to tag him. Now I don't know if they tag and trade though.
That's the interesting part. Yeah, we'll see, man. We shall see.
Commanders as an option.
For Mitch, absolutely. If I'm Mitch, I'm looking at them squads.
Patriots.
Do you think? But see, to me, him going to the Patriots is no different than he stayed here. I think he looks at Kenny and looks at Mac and say, I can wait this out. I might can get this one.
That's really it. So you could look at, I'd say 6 or 7 teams.
Yeah.
Saints, I already mentioned them. Raiders, they'll probably address QB somehow, some way. And could it be Mitch? I don't know. But if they do bring in Mitch, they'd probably bring in another guy for a competition.
Kind of like what we did this past year. We brought in Mitch, but then we still drafted a guy.
From my standpoint, I think there's quite a few teams where he could go to and at least compete for the starting job. Yeah. Whereas if he stayed here, I don't think that's happening. But does he want to get into that starters competition type of thing with the lack of continuity? I don't know. Yeah, it's all on what he wants. And I don't know how those teams that we're talking about, those 6 or 7 teams, 8 teams, view Mitch. Maybe they just don't want anything to do with him because he's at a certain stage in his career. They just want to go younger, even if they do think Mitch is better.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you Mitch, though, man, you don't have to get caught up in is it an open competition or not? Because we've seen, even when it's called a competition, if the team decides they just want to do what they're going to do, it really isn't a competition. But that's why I say for Mitch, it's more so you look at who are the other guys on the roster. What are they doing well? What aren't they doing well? What have they proven? What haven't they proved? And then I think you just make your list and say, I think this gives you the best opportunity to get back on the field, regardless of if they call it a competition or not. Does this get me back out there faster? Does this give me the best chance to be successful? And I think if he does that, he'll have some legit choices, man, to make, whether that is staying here or going to some of them spots, though.